I dropped my husband off at the airport thinking it was just another business trip. The kind of routine goodbye you barely remember the next morning. But right as I turned to leave, my 6-year-old son squeezed my hand so tight it hurt and whispered, "Mama, don't go back home." I laughed at first. Softly, the way you laugh when your child says something strange. But then he added, trembling, "This morning I heard Daddy planning something really bad against us. Please believe me this time." And for the first time in weeks, something inside me went cold, because Kenzo didn't say it like a child imagining monsters. He said it like a child who'd heard one. I believed him. We hid. And what I saw next made my blood run out of my body. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. We love knowing how far these stories travel. THEIRPORS. The fluorescent lights in Hartsfield Jackson felt like needles behind my eyes. It was Thursday night, and I wasn't just tired. I was the kind of tired that comes from living on emotional autopilot for too long, smiling through discomfort, swallowing questions, making peace with things that never should have been normal. My husband, Quasi, stood beside me looking flawless. Gray tailored suit, leather briefcase, that expensive cologne I bought him last birthday. To everyone around us, we probably looked like perfection, black excellence. The power couple. Successful executive husband, supportive wife, well-mannered child. No one would have guessed that my marriage felt like a house with the lights on and nobody home. Kenzo stood on my other side, quiet as stone. My child has always been observant. He watches the world like he's collecting secrets. But tonight his eyes weren't just observant, they were afraid. "This trip is critical," Kwasi said, pulling me into that polished, public hug. 3 days tops. I'm back. He kissed my cheek like a routine. Then he crouched in front of Kenzo and placed his hands on my son's shoulders, performing fatherhood like it was part of his brand. "And you?" He smiled. "You take care of Mama while I'm gone." "All right, little man." Kenzo didn't smile back. He stared at him like he was studying his face for the last time. I should have noticed. I should have asked why my son looked like he was saying goodbye forever. But when you're married, you convince yourself that the people you love aren't capable of terrible things. That's what love does when it's still trying to survive. Kwasi kissed Kenzo's forehead, kissed mine again and walked away. And as he disappeared toward TSA, Kenzo's grip tightened around my hand. "Oh, come." We started walking toward the exit. I was already thinking about my heels, my bed, and how quiet the house would feel without him. Then Kenzo stopped so suddenly I nearly stumbled. "Kenzo," I turned. "Baby, what?" He looked up at me with an expression that punched the air out of my lungs. Pure terror. "Mama," he whispered, voice shaking. "We can't go back home." My first instinct was to comfort him, to brush it off like childhood anxiety. But his face wasn't dramatic. It was desperate. I crouched down and held his arms gently. "What do you mean? Of course we're going home." He swallowed hard and his voice cracked. "Mama, please, don't." Believe me this time, but those words stung, because he was right. He had warned me before. Weeks ago he told me about a strange car parked near our house at night. I called it coincidence. Days later he said he heard Daddy in his office saying, "We'll solve the problem once and for all." I told Kenzo not to listen to grown-up conversations. I told myself I was protecting him, but now he was shaking, and his eyes were glossy with tears. I leaned in close. "Okay," I whispered. "I believe you. Tell me." Kenzo looked around like the airport itself could betray him. Then he pulled me closer and whispered into my ear. "This morning I woke up early and went to get water, and I heard Daddy on the phone." My stomach turned. He said tonight something bad was going to happen when we were sleeping. My heart stopped. He said he needed to be far away when it happened. Kenzo's voice dropped lower. He said we wouldn't be in his way anymore. My skin went ice cold. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself it was a misunderstanding. But memories started stacking like Brixie. Kwasi increasing my life insurance policy for generational wealth. Kwasi insisting the house, the accounts, even the car, be put in his name. Kwasi getting angry every time I mentioned returning to work. And a phone call I overheard weeks ago. It has to look accidental. I had convinced myself it was business. But now I looked into my son's face and saw truth, not imagination. Truth. "Tiachatasha sevido you are livies, okay?" I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "We're not going home." Kenzo's shoulders dropped in relief, like he'd been carrying a weight too big for his body. We walked to the parking deck. I buckled him in with shaking hands, then got in the driver's seat. "Mama," he whispered from the back. "Yes, baby." "Thank you for believing me." I swallowed tears. "I'm always going to believe you," I said. "Always." And I meant it. I drove toward Buckhead, but not into our driveway. I took a back street and parked where we could see our house through trees. From a distance, everything looked normal. Porch-like lawn. The home I thought was safe. I turned off the engine. We sat in total darkness and waited. T.H.E. van at 10:17 p.m. I almost convinced myself we were being ridiculous. Then Kenzo whispered, "Mama, look." A dark van turned onto our street. No decals, tinted windows, no front plate I could see. It moved slowly, too slowly. Like it wasn't driving, like it was searching. My breath caught as it stopped directly in front of our house. The doors opened. 2 men stepped out. Not delivery men. Not technicians. They moved with purpose, and the way they scanned the street made my blood turn. One of them reached into his pocket. I expected a crowbar, but what he pulled out crushed me. A key. He unlocked my front door like he owned the place. Kenzo's voice trembled. "Mama, how do they have a key?" I couldn't answer, because only one person could have given them access. My husband. The men slipped inside. No lights, only flashlight beams sliding behind the curtains. Then a smell. Chemical sharp. Gasoline. Kenzo sniffed. "Mama, what's that?" My eyes snapped to the windows. Smoke, thin at first, then thicker. Then the orange glow. "Fire, THSCAS bar end light like a akanafsaspo no," I whispered. My body moved before my brain could think. I opened the car door. Kenzo grabbed me. "Mama!" No, and he was right. If I ran into that house, I'd be running into death. The flames exploded fast, climbing like they were hungry. Windows shattered. Fire reached the second floor, Kenzo's room, the curtains, everything. A siren screamed in the distance. The van vanished before the fire trucks arrived. I dropped to my knees in the street. Not because I was weak, because my world was collapsing, and then my phone buzzed. A text from Kwiza. "Hey, babe. Just landed. Hope you and Kenzo are sleeping well. Love you. See you soon." I stared at it until my vision blurred. He knew. He had always known. He was building an alibi while my house burned, while his son's bed turned to ash. I threw up on the curb, shaking. Kenzo sat beside me, staring at the fire like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And I realized something that split my soul. If I hadn't believed my child, we would have been inside that house, and no one would have ever known the truth. Thion and Karadmy Fatar left me. We couldn't go to friends. We couldn't go to anyone in Kwasi's circle. And with his connections and money, I didn't even trust the system yet. That's when I remembered something my father did before he died. He gave me a card, and he said, "Ira, if you ever need real help, find this person. Attorney Zunara Okafor." I dialed the number with trembling fingers. A firm voice answered. "Okafor speaking. My name is Ira," I whispered. "My father was Langston Vance. He gave me your number." A pause. Then, "Where are you right now?" "My house burned down," I said, "and I think my husband tried to kill me and my son." Her voice became sharp. "Are you safe? Can you drive?" "Yes." "Good. Write this address down. And listen carefully. Do not stop anywhere. Do not go to anyone else." FOR next. By midnight, we were inside her office. She locked 3 deadbolts behind us. Kenzo was asleep on a sofa under a blanket. And Zunara sat across from me and said, "Tell me everything." When I finished, she opened a locked cabinet, pulled out a thick file, and slid it across the desk. "Your father had your husband investigated 3 years ago," she said. And the first page I saw made my heart stop. The Fulhamwy for the Echur Lefetier Zanara Okafor slid the folder across the desk like it was something poisonous. The cover was plain, no label, no dramatic stamp, just a thick manila file stuffed so full it barely closed. "Your father didn't trust your husband," she said quietly. "Not for 1 second." My stomach tightened. "Why?" I whispered. "Kwasi adored my father. He visited him, paid for treatments, sat in that hospital room like a saint." Zunara finished, eyes sharp. "That's exactly why Langston worried. Men who perform kindness are often hiding the opposite." She opened the folder. The first page was a photograph, Kwasi. Not the Kwasi in tailored suits and clean smiles. This Kwasi stood outside a grimy building under a flickering neon sign. His jaw was clenched, eyes sunken, shoulders tense, like a man losing control of his life. Below it was a date. 3 years ago. My throat went dry. "What is this?" I asked. "A private investigator report." Zunara said. Your father paid for it himself. She flipped through the pages. Bank statements, casino receipts, loan documents, photos of Kwasi walking into underground gambling halls. Another photo, Kwasi shaking hands with a man who looked like trouble wrapped in skin. Then Zunara looked up at me. Your husband isn't a successful executive IRA, she said. He's a drowning man. I blinked. No, he has contracts, clients. He has debt, she corrected. Heavy debt. She tapped a page with her fingernail. Your husband owes nearly $500,000 to loan sharks. The room spun. I gripped the coffee cup like it could anchor me. That can't be true, I whispered. Zunara's expression softened only slightly. Do you remember your mother's inheritance? My chest tightened. 150,000, I said automatically. She left it to me. And you put it in a joint account, Zunara said. I swallowed. Yes. She turned another page. A statement. Withdrawals in chunks, transfers, cash outs, payments. Gone. All of it. My breath shattered. He spent it. I choked. Zunara nodded, down to the last cent. I stared at the paper, unable to process it. All those times he told me, I'm handling everything. All those times he smiled and said, don't stress, babe. I'm protecting us, Dow. He wasn't protecting us. He was bleeding us dry. Buhytheans Miterio Nara leaned back and folded her hands. Now we get to the part where your son saved your life. I looked up slowly. She spoke with the calm of someone who'd seen evil up close. You have a life insurance policy worth $2.5 million, she said. Correct. My throat tightened. Yes, my father insisted on it when we married. Zunara nodded. And your husband increased it recently. My skin went cold. Yes. She held my gaze. A fire is the perfect accident, she said. Hard to prove, easy to explain away, especially if the family is asleep. My mouth opened, but no sound came. Zunara continued. Your husband flies out of state, establishes an alibi, hires men to set the house on fire, and returns as the devastated husband. She paused, then collects $2.5 million. My stomach turned. And the debts vanish, I whispered, horror rising. And he's free, Zunara said, eyes narrowing. Just like your son heard him say. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Kenzo's whisper at the airport replayed in my mind like a siren. He's planning something really bad against us. My 6-year-old hadn't imagined it. He'd overheard the blueprint of our deaths. The naduas coafrms tle at 700 am. Zunara knocked on the little back room door where Kenzo and I had barely slept. Turn on the TV, she said. Channel 2 I did, and there it was. Breaking news, Buckhead luxury home destroyed in massive fire. Fate of family unknown. The camera showed the ruins. Blackened beams, smoking rubble, firefighters still combing through what used to be my life. Then the reporter's voice shifted. We're now seeing the husband arrive at the scene. And there he was. Kwasi, stepping out of a car like a man stepping onto a stage, his hair slightly messy, just enough to look distressed. Shirt wrinkled, just enough to look like he ran straight from the airport, his face arranged into the perfect expression of horror. My wife, he shouted, grabbing his head. My son! Somebody tell me they weren't inside! He screamed for cameras, he screamed for neighbors, he screamed for sympathy. But I watched closely. His eyes were dry, his movements were practiced. And then he asked the fire chief a question that punched through me like a bullet. Did you find them? He demanded. Did you find the bodies yet? Not are they alive, not have you checked hospitals, bodies. Kenzo shrank beside me. He's lying. My son whispered. He's pretending. Zunara turned off the TV with a snap. He'll play this role all day, she said. But when they don't find bodies, he'll realize something went wrong. I swallowed hard. So what do we do? Zunara leaned forward. We'll prove it. TGP land failed to Lee Mishes. We need evidence, she said. Real evidence, not just suspicion. I shook my head. The house is a crime scene. Police are everywhere. Not forever, Zunara replied. By tonight, the scene will be quieter. And Kwasi won't sleep there. He'll be in a hotel, still pretending he's grieving. My throat tightened. You're saying we go back? Zunara nodded once. We'll get into his office safe. I stared at her. You want me to break into my own burned house? Technically, she said, it's still your house. I glanced at Kenzo. He sat up straighter as if he'd been waiting to speak. I'm coming, he said quietly. No, I snapped. Absolutely not. Kenzo didn't flinch. Mama, I know where Daddy hides things, he said. Places you don't know. I froze. Because I believed him. My son wasn't just scared, he was observant. He always had been. Zunara gave a slow nod. Children see what adults ignore, she said. If anyone can guide us to what your husband hid, it's him. My stomach twisted. I hated it. But I knew the truth. If we didn't get proof now, Quasi would rewrite the story, and once he rewrote it, we might not survive the sequel. Tichie returned to Cass. That night Zunara dressed us like shadows, dark clothes, gloves, flashlight. We didn't drive into the neighborhood like normal people. We parked blocks away, cut through a back path, climbed a low wall where cameras didn't reach. The air smelled like smoke long before we saw the house. When it came into view, my legs nearly gave out. What used to be my home was now a skeleton. Black beams, charred windows, ash floating in the air like dirty snow. Kenzo tightened his grip on my hand. I'm here, he whispered. I'm here. Zunara crouched beside us. 20 minutes, she said. In and out. No hesitation, no panic. Had we slipped in through a back door that still opened? Inside, the destruction felt personal. Melted picture frames, collapsed ceiling, the smell of burned memories. But Kenzo pulled me forward without stopping. Daddy's office, he whispered. We moved through the house like we were walking through a grave. Up the stairs, unstable, groaning with every step. Then the office door. It was jammed, but I forced it open. The room was darker than the rest, less burned, like fate had preserved it for one reason. The safe. Behind a half-burned painting, Kenzo pointed. Right there. My hand shook as I entered the code. Quasi's birthday. Beep, green light, click. The safe opened. Inside, a cache, stacks of documents, and a burner phone. Take everything, Zunara hissed. I grabbed papers, stuffed them into a bag. Then Kenzo's voice, sharp, urgent. Mama, here. He knelt and lifted a loose floorboard. I stared. A hiding spot I never knew existed. Inside was a black notebook, another phone, and a sealed envelope. My heart hammered. I snatched it all. We go, I whispered. No. We stepped toward the door, and then we heard it, voices. Downstairs. 2 men, not police, not firefighters, and the words that froze my blood. Boss said check if the job was finished. Kenzo's face turned white. Because we both recognized that voice. The same voice we'd heard on the street, the night our house burned. I could hear my own heartbeat. It was so loud in my ears I was sure the men outside the closet could hear it too. Kenzo was pressed against my side, his small body rigid, his breath shallow and fast. I wrapped one arm around him, the other clamped over his mouth. Not hard, just enough to remind him not to make a sound. The flashlight beam slid across the office floor. Slow, deliberate. Dust particles danced in the light like tiny ghosts. Someone was here. One of the men said again, his voice low and sharp. And not long ago. My knees trembled. The beam moved closer to the closet door. Closer, I silently begged God, the universe, anything to stop what was about to happen. Kenzo's eyes were wide, glassy with fear. But he didn't cry. He didn't move. My brave, observant little boy then. A scream. A woman's scream. Outside, sharp, loud, full of terror. What the hell was that? One of the men barked. The flashlight snapped away from the closet. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Check it out. Now. The office door slammed shut as they rushed out. I didn't wait. I yanked the closet door open, scooped Kenzo into my arms and ran. Destraton, we flew down the stairs, ash crunching under our feet. I nearly slipped twice, but adrenaline kept me upright. At the back door, Zunara was already there, breathing hard, eyes blazing. That scream, I gasped. That was you. She nodded grimly. I figured 2 armed men would respond faster to panic than silence. We bolted over the back lawn, through the broken gate, toward the wall. Zunara boosted Kenzo up first, then me. As my feet hit the pavement on the other side, I heard shouting behind us. Shh. Gunmetal, footsteps pounding. Zunara shoved me toward the car parked down the block. Gio. We dove inside. She slammed the door, started the engine, and peeled off just as a flashlight beam swept across the street where we'd been seconds earlier. Only when the neighborhood disappeared behind us did I finally breathe. Kenzo collapsed against me, shaking. You did amazing, I whispered, holding him tight. You were perfect. He nodded weakly. They almost saw us, he murmured. Yes, Zunara said from the driver's seat, voice calm but hard. And now they know someone touched the safe. My stomach dropped. They'll tell Quasi. Zunara smiled, slow and dangerous. Good. I stared at her. How is that good? Because panic makes people sloppy, she said. And your husband is about to panic. Wad boo e food. Back at her office, we emptied the bag onto the desk. Money, phones, documents, then the black notebook. Zunara opened it and her eyes lit up. "Oh, he's an idiot," she murmured. "What?" I asked. "He documented everything." She turned the notebook toward me. Dates, amounts, names, loan sharks, payments, threats. And then toward the end, fell sol UTOM insurance payout, a 2.5M must look accidental fire preferred contact Marcus service fee, the 50,000 date Nova 21, that was yesterday. I covered my mouth. He wrote it down. I whispered. "Why would anyone do that?" "Leverage," Zunara replied. "If something went wrong, he could blackmail the men he hired." She picked up one of the burner phones. "And these?" She smirked. "These are going to bury him. Texts, call logs, messages. One stood out. QZ, has to be tonight. I'll be out of state." "And the kid?" "Q, no witnesses. Handle it." My vision blurred. He'd been willing to kill our son. My hands clenched. Something cold and sharp replaced fear inside me. "The Masai." Zunara glanced at my phone. "He's trying to reach you." I looked. Missed calls. Texts. "Ira, where are you? Police didn't find bodies." "Answer me." "I know you're alive." Weenie Mask was gone. "He knows," I said quietly. Zunara nodded. "Good." She leaned forward. "Text him." My heart slammed. "No." "Yes," she said firmly. "We end this." What do I say? She dictated calmly. "Centennial Olympic Park, tomorrow, 10 am, come alone." My fingers trembled as I sent it. His reply came instantly. "I'll be there. Things aren't what you think." Zunara let out a short laugh. "They never are." TCCTP that night. Kenzo slept curled beside me. I barely closed my eyes. By morning, police were in position. Detective Hightower, incorruptible, relentless, had plainclothes officers scattered throughout the park. Cameras, audio, witnesses. Kenzo stayed behind with Zunara safe. At exactly 10:00 a.m. Quasi arrived. Unshaven, wrinkled eyes darting, he ran toward me. "Ira, thank God, don't touch me," I said. He froze. I saw everything. I continued. The men, the fire, the safe. His face drained of color. "Ira, listen." "Why?" I demanded. "Why did you try to kill us?" He snapped. "You don't understand. I was drowning. I needed the money." "And Kenzo," I whispered. "What about our son?" His mouth twisted. He was in the way. That was all the police needed. Emerhiad Baroka, Quasi Vance, a voice rang out. "You are under arrest." He panicked and ran straight toward me. He grabbed me, knife flashing. "Nobody move." The blade pressed into my neck. I felt blood. I stayed calm. "You already failed," I said quietly. "Cowards hire others to kill." His hand shook. A single shot rang out. The knife fell. Quasi screamed as officers tackled him. It was over. When they pulled Quasi off me and slammed him to the ground, I didn't feel relief. I felt empty, like something inside my chest had finally shattered after being cracked for years. The park was chaos, sirens, shouting, people recording on their phones, but all I could hear was my own breathing. Slow, shallow, uneven. Detective Hightower knelt in front of me. "You're safe now," he said gently. Safe. The word felt foreign. I nodded anyway. Across the park, Quasi was screaming as officers cuffed him. Not pleading, not apologizing, threatening. "This isn't over," he yelled. "You think this ends me? You ruined everything." I watched him like I was watching a stranger. No, worse, like I was watching a ghost of someone who never truly existed. THRS tat, Sooka Vritaigi Quasi was charged within hours. Attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit homicide. The list kept growing as investigators went through the phones, the notebook, the bank records. The two men he hired, Marcus and the other one, were arrested the same night. They didn't hold out long. Men like that never do. When faced with decades in prison, they talked. And what they said made my stomach turn. Quasi hadn't hesitated. He hadn't expressed doubt. He hadn't asked if Kenzo would be spared. He'd simply said, "Make sure there are no witnesses." That sentence replayed in my head for weeks. No witnesses. Not even his own child. The media loved it. Successful Atlanta executive accused of plotting deadly house fire. They called me the lucky wife. They called Kenzo miraculously saved. They called Quasi a monster hiding behind respectability. But what no headline could explain was this: how you can sleep next to someone for 8 years and never know the shape of their darkness. Kenzo didn't watch the news. I made sure of that. But he heard things. Kids always do. At school, whispers followed him. "That's the boy whose house burned down. That's the kid whose dad went to jail." One night he asked me quietly, "Mama, was Daddy always bad?" I held him close. "No," I said honestly. "But he made very bad choices, and then he kept making them." "Did he ever love us?" That question broke me. I think he loved the idea of us, I said carefully. But real love doesn't hurt people. Kenzo nodded slowly, as if he was filing that truth away for later. I didn't want to go to the trial, but Zunara insisted. You don't owe him forgiveness, she said. But you owe yourself the truth, spoken out loud. The courtroom smelled like old wood and quiet judgment. Kwasi sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, no cologne, no charm. He didn't look at me, not once. When the prosecution laid out the evidence, the room went silent. The notebook, the texts, the recorded meeting at the park, the testimony of the men he hired. When the prosecutor read Kwasi's message aloud, no witnesses. Handle it. I felt the room inhale. The judge looked at Kwasi like he was something rotten. His lawyer tried everything. Mental stress, temporary insanity, none of it worked. You can't explain away a written plan to murder your own family. Verdict guilty. On all counts. Kwasi was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. No parole for a long time. I wasn't there when the sentence was read. I didn't need to see his face fall. Zunara texted me instead. Justice is served. I stared at the message for a long time. Justice. It didn't bring my house back. It didn't erase the nightmares. But it gave us something important. Finality. Startgafram SS, the insurance company paid out. For the house itself, not the life insurance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Kwasi burned the house trying to profit from death. Instead, that money helped us survive. We moved into a small apartment in Decatur. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Kenzo chose the room closest to mine. I like knowing you're there, he said. I understood. I felt the same way. Kenzo started therapy. At first, he barely spoke. Then slowly he opened up. About the fire, about the men, about his father. Some nights, he woke up screaming. On those nights, I held him and hummed the same lullabies I sang when he was a baby. Eventually, the screams turned into whimpers. Then into silence. One night as I tucked him in, he looked up at me and said, Mama, I saved you, right? I smiled through tears. You saved us, I said. You're my hero. He smiled back, and I saw something beautiful. Pride. I became after I went back to work. Something Kwasi never allowed. I joined a non-profit that helped women escape dangerous relationships. I understood them, the doubt, the fear, the excuses we make for men who don't deserve them. A year later, Zunara did something unexpected. She offered me a position at her firm. You have instinct, she said, and purpose. Don't waste it. I went back to school, law school at 34. Hard, exhausting, worth it. I passed the bar. I became the woman I wish I'd had when my life burned down. 5 Solar Kenzo is 11 now. Smart, curious, observant. Still observant, but no longer afraid. Our house is modest, warm, full of laughter. On the porch one morning, he asked me, Mama, are you happy? I thought about it, about the fire, the betrayal, the fear, and the life we built after. Yes, I said honestly. I am, he nodded, satisfied. I think I am too. 5 years after the fire, I finally understood something that used to confuse me. Survival isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or victory speeches. Most of the time, survival is quiet. It looks like waking up without fear. It sounds like a child laughing in another room. It feels like choosing peace over panic. Again and again. People sometimes ask me about Kwasi. They expect anger, hate, a dramatic answer. But the truth is simpler and more powerful. I rarely think about him. When the divorce was finalized, it felt like signing paperwork for a stranger. His name on the page no longer stirred emotion. The man I thought I married never existed, and the man who tried to kill us didn't deserve space in my future. Prison changed him, they said. He aged fast. Lost weight. Lost relevance. I didn't celebrate that. I didn't mourn it either. I let it go, because healing doesn't mean carrying the past like a trophy or a wound. Healing means laying it down. Tishijui Seidi Idalichi Kenzo is 11 now. Still observant. Still thoughtful, but no longer afraid of shadows. He talks more, laughs louder, questions everything. One afternoon, while working on a science project at the kitchen table, he looked up and asked, Mama, do you think kids always know when something's wrong? I paused. I think kids feel things before adults admit them, I said. He nodded slowly. I knew Daddy was scary before I knew why. My chest tightened. You were brave, I told him, braver than most adults. He shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. I just didn't want us to die. And that's when I realized something else. Children don't need us to teach them courage. They need us to listen when they use it. Teach more KSHEALDME. Becoming a lawyer didn't erase my pain, but it gave it direction. Every woman who sat across from me with fear in her eyes, every child who clung to their mother in silence, I recognized them. Not because our stories were identical, but because the feeling was. That quiet voice inside saying something isn't right, and the fear of saying it out loud. I didn't promise miracles. I promised honesty. I promised safety. I promised that their voices mattered, even if no one had believed them before. And sometimes that was enough to save a life. Thejos Buiscosa, our new home isn't large. No gates. No marble countertops. No pretending it's warm. It smells like coffee in the morning and food on the stove at night. Kenzo picked the paint color for his room. Deep blue. No fire colors, he said seriously. I agreed. We planted a tree in the backyard our first year there. Kenzo named it Second Chance. It's taller than both of us now. Off Argidanis. Ralikaida. One night, Kenzo asked me something that stopped me cold. Mama, did you forgive Daddy? I thought about it carefully. Forgiveness doesn't mean saying what he did was okay, I said. It means refusing to let what he did control who we become. Kenzo considered that. I think I forgive him a little, he said. Not for him. For I smiled. That's wisdom most adults never reach. Every year on the anniversary of the airport night, Kenzo and I do something special. Not to remember the fire, but to honor the choice. The choice to listen. The choice to believe. The choice to leave. This year we went back to the airport. Not the same gate, not the same terminal. Just close enough. Kenzo stood beside me, taller now, steadier. You know, he said, if you hadn't believed me, none of this would exist. He gestured around. Not the airport. Our life. I believed you, I said softly. He smiled. That's why we're here. That kari iwntoaar. If there's one reason I tell this story, it's not for drama. It's for the quiet moments, the whispers, the uneasy feelings you keep explaining away. It's for the children who notice what adults ignore. It's for the women who feel trapped but can't explain why. And it's for anyone who thinks starting over means failure. Sometimes the starting over is how you survive. THEND. Tonight, Kenzo is asleep in his room. The house is quiet, peaceful. I sit at the kitchen table, the same place where years ago I signed papers that felt like an ending. Now it feels like a beginning. We didn't just escape a fire. We escaped a lie. And in doing so, we found something better than the life we lost. We found the truth. People think the hardest part is escaping. It isn't. The hardest part comes after. When the danger is gone, the adrenaline fades, and you're left alone with the silence. That's when your mind finally has space to remember. Goif Eslos do Dublin. Months passed after the trial. Life didn't snap back into place the way people expect it to in movies. There was no dramatic new beginning montage. Just mornings. Coffee cooling on the counter. School lunches packed carefully. Emails answered. Bills paid. Normal things, and yet every normal moment felt fragile. Sometimes I'd be folding laundry and suddenly smell smoke. There was none. Sometimes Kenzo would freeze at the sound of sirens, his body going stiff like a switch had flipped. Trauma doesn't leave politely. It lingers. Kenzo's nightmares changed over time. At first they were loud, screaming, crying, waking up drenched in sweat. Later they became quiet. He'd wake up sitting straight in bed, eyes wide, breathing fast but saying nothing. Those nights scared me more, because silence is harder to reach. One night I sat beside him and asked softly, "What did you dream about?" He hesitated, then whispered, "I dreamed the house was burning, but Daddy was inside this time." My chest tightened. "And?" I asked gently. "And I didn't feel scared," he said. I felt sad. I pulled him into my arms. "That means you're healing," I told him. "Feeling sad instead of afraid means you're letting go." He nodded, trusting me, even when I wasn't always sure myself. Healing brings questions. Not the kind you ask out loud, the kind that sneak up on you when you're alone. How long had Quasi been planning it? At what point did love turn into calculation? Was there ever a moment I could have stopped it sooner? Those questions used to haunt me. Until one day, Zunara said something that changed everything. "You didn't miss the signs because you were stupid," she said. "You missed them because you were human." She paused. "And because he worked very hard to hide them." That truth freed me. Responsibility belongs to the person who causes harm, not the one who trusted. Before the fire, my life revolved around keeping things smooth. keeping Kwasi comfortable, keeping appearances perfect, keeping questions quiet. After the fire, I stopped shrinking. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I stopped explaining my instincts away. At work, I spoke with clarity. With clients, I listened without judgment. With myself, I became honest. I learned something powerful: you don't become strong by surviving once. You become strong by choosing yourself every day after. The Dai Kenzo spoke a upajin one afternoon at school. Kenzo got into trouble. Not for fighting, for speaking up. A teacher had brushed off another student who said she was scared to go home. She's exaggerating, the teacher said. Kids do that. Kenzo stood up and said, no. Sometimes kids tell the truth and adults don't listen. The room went quiet. I was called in that day, not to scold him, to hear the story. The counselor told me, your son has an unusual sense of awareness and courage. I smiled sadly. He learned it the hard way, I said, but I was proud, because he hadn't learned silence. Titi la vui bui alto empros of our home slowly filled with warmth. Not expensive furniture, but safety. Kenzo started inviting friends over. Lauder returned. Music played while I cooked. The tree in the backyard grew taller, its branches reaching wide like it was claiming space too. Sometimes I'd catch Kenzo staring at it. Second chance is getting big. He'd say, so are you? I'd reply, and he was. The lectri emir senti. One night I wrote a letter to Kwasi. I never mailed it. But writing it mattered. I didn't accuse him, didn't insult him. I wrote, you don't get to define how this story ends. You tried to erase us? Instead, you freed us. Then I folded it and burned it safely in the sink. Not in anger, in release. Nu het pactual off like peace doesn't feel like happiness all the time. Sometimes peace feels like not checking the door twice, not flinching at footsteps, sleeping through the night, laughing without guilt. Peace feels steady. And steady is everything when you've lived in chaos. A promise to myself. I made a promise after everything happened. I promised I would never ignore my inner voice again. Never silence a child's fear. Never confuse comfort with safety. And I promised Kenzo something too. If you ever feel scared, I told him, you speak up, even if your voice shakes. He smiled. I know, he said. You'll listen.